Good morning. So we are going to be talking about another lesson from the Top 20 Teens book. Remember, we did about 4 lessons from them earlier on this quarter, and we're going to continue talking about lessons from this because as we move through this week and through next week, we're really going to be discussing conflict and relationships and how we deal with conflict inside those relationships. But first, we got to deal with who we are inside and try to figure out some stuff in here before we can be a good influence for other people. So, if you see the board behind me, what it's really talking about is the influence of messages and messages we receive from other people, messages we receive from the media, things like that, but also messages that we send ourselves. So there's 3 different goals that we have today is number one, make sure you discover who you are, be true to yourself, be true to your personality, making sure you understand that you can accept your personality, but we can definitely change our character. Remember the character choices that we talked about quite a bit really are the things that other people see. The second thing is make sure that you surround yourself with people who help you discover who you are in a healthy way, making sure that we're keeping those bad influences out of our life and making sure we're keeping people out of our life who tell us that we are not good enough. And then finally, on the flip side of that, you need to make sure that you are the positive influence on other people, okay, to help them discover who they are. So I'm going to get my face out of the way here and we are going to talk about the influence of messages. So as we go through this lesson, like I talked about, we need to figure out who you are. We need people to help you figure out who you are. And then we also need to make sure that you're helping other people discover who they are. So we again are going to talk about some important things here. So we have the power of the social mirror. So, how do you know who you are? Obviously, there are countless ways you come to know who you are. They include family and relatives, friends, classmates, what you're involved with in school or even at church, the participation you have in extracurricular activities or other organizations, just life experiences. And these are all part of your social mirror, which reflects back to you an image of who you are. The primary way these reflections come to you is through messages. So, in other words, an important way to come to know who you are is by verbal and nonverbal messages that you receive from others. So, again, understanding that you get thousands of messages each day. Some messages are important, some are trivial, and the most important messages are those dealing with others who think you are not or what you want to be. Some of these messages are super obvious, and just some are not. So, as a message sender, you need to understand that some very powerful things about messages. The most important thing is how much power they actually hold. They have so much influence over you. They influence what you think about and how you think. So, if you look over on the right, there's a ton of messages that you're just getting from those different groups of people. People telling you that you're too sensitive, telling you that you can't hang out in their group, telling you that, oh, you have great self discipline, telling that you're too young for something, telling you that what you're wearing has been out of style for months, okay, telling you that you never do anything right. Okay, some might even tell you that you're a great student, okay, and that they're happy that you're their friend. But all of these things have a ton of influence over you. Another important consideration that we need to regard regarding messages is how valid they are. And sometimes we feel that everything we are told is truth. Okay, so is that message true or is it false? Each message that comes to you is also interpreted by you. You interpret each message as being either true or false. The validity of the message and your interpretation of the message creates 4 different possibilities that you see here. So if you receive a false message but interpret it as true, you are now believing what is false. If you receive a true message and interpret it as false, you are now believing what is false. If you receive a true message that interpret it as true, you are now believing what is true. And if you receive a false message but interpret it as false, you are now believing what is true. So the quality of your life is really dictated by this. So you have to understand that top 20s are very good at interpreting true messages as true and false messages as false. So if you're able to do that, the quality of your life will vastly improve. Bottom 80s are going to often interpret true messages as false and false messages as true. So if you fall into this category, the quality of your life and relationships are going to go down and decline. The reason for this is that messages inform you. Once a message gets in, it tends to form who you are. It forms the way you see yourself, it forms your opinions and your attitudes, it forms your beliefs. All of these important things are being formed by what is false. They're going to have a negative impact on your life, and if they're being formed by what is true, they will have a positive impact on your life. So we are going to talk about a story called The Burning Match. So imagine someone telling you to hold on to a burning match. You are told not to drop it or blow it out. And as the flame gets closer to your fingers, you realize you're about to get burned. So now what? Do you continue to hold on to the match, or do you blow it out or drop it even though you were told not to? So messages can be like burning matches. False messages can burn or hurt you if you hold on to them long enough. These dangerous messages need to be dropped. So I'm going to tell you a story about Clark. Okay, Clark is a very talented and highly successful 40-year-old man. He's respected by his colleagues for his honesty, kindness, and contributions he makes to the company. People like working and socializing with Clark, but Clark is unhappy and never finds satisfaction in his work or relationships. He feels inadequate. Why though? Because of false messages. As a high school student, Clark worked as a carpenter with his father, and no matter how hard Clark tried, his father constantly criticized his work. The board was never cut right or nailed straight enough to satisfy his father. Even if someone else was responsible for the work his father was unhappy with, Clark would often be the one who was blamed. Usually, the father's criticism came when other people were present. So, can you see the burning match that Clark has hung on to for over 25 years? Do you see how his father sent him a false message that Clark accepted as true? And do you see how Clark's interpretation of this message, I'm inadequate, I never do anything right, has negatively influenced his life? So now what? Do you think Clark can let go of the harmful false messages that are that's spoiling his life? Do you think he can change his interpretation of the false message and see it as false? Well, if he can, he's going to become the eagle that he truly is. So again, top 20s are very adept at recognizing and hanging on to true messages and spotting and letting go of false messages. That's why top 20s are able to get through this. Now we're going to talk about the influence and the power of teen culture. So influence is a subtle but pretty awesome power that changes the action or thinking of another person. Sometimes the influence is direct and intentional. Sometimes it's indirect and unplanned. Sometimes it's in your best interest, and sometimes it's in your worst interest. To some extent, it's probably true that everyone is influenced and everyone influences. A major influence on all people is the culture in which they live. Adolescents are influenced strongly by their own teen culture. Top 20 teens are very aware of the power of peer and media influence. So, in particular, they're aware of the negative influence that teen culture can have on youth. Okay, so top 20s are aware of the following questions regarding teen culture influences. First one is, what do they have me wearing, eating, or drinking? What do they have me doing or saying? What do they have me thinking or feeling? And where do they have me going? What do they have me becoming? So the next time that you are able to hang out with a group of people, just look around and see what they're wearing. Okay, see how they're acting, see how they're talking. Okay, you're going to realize that many of us find ourselves sucking into the same look, the same voice, the same type of things that we want to do when we hang out. That is the influence of teen culture. The second part is peer influence. So think back to being in a group in grade school. So can you remember something that became a value to that group? Something you needed to have? Even think of this year, a way you needed to act or commonly used phrase. What you remember is probably the result of group influence. Although you may not have been aware of this influence at the time, it was super present and extremely active. Perhaps the other group members weren't even aware of their influence on you, but it was still taking place. Some influence will nudge us in one direction and some influence will nudge us in another direction. But again, top 20s have a sharp awareness of where there is influence on them and the direction in which that influence is pushing. They also know that they are not completely controlled by peer influence. They're still free and responsible for making their own decisions. The third influence is the media. Today, the powerful, unseen force of media influence has become stronger than ever. As families have been forced to produce double incomes, many kids are being raised by the media. Teens are bombarded by the overwhelming influence from TV, radio, magazines, video games, and the internet. You guys get over 3,000 marketing images per day through your media contacts. So, really understanding bottom 80 teens are overly influenced by peers and media. Top 20 teens are able to filter those teen culture messages through the truth. They're able to distinguish between messages that are true and messages that are false. Teens are less likely to be influenced in ways that are contrary to their best interest. So you have the power and responsibility to decide whether the messages that come from the truth or the messages from teen culture will influence you. Which of these messages is the shining light that can help you discover the path to a joyful and satisfying life? Which messages is a burning match that will damage you and your life and relationships? So on the left, you see the messages of truth. It says, you're wonderful, you belong, and you're accepted. Just be yourself and be real. Let your outside reflect your inside? And then on the right, we'd see the messages of teen culture. Okay, you're not good enough. You have to pretend to be somebody different. You have to do a image makeover if you ever want to be cool. Okay, cover up your inside and don't do anything to make your outside look, or make sure you do everything to make your outside look better. Those things which are most meaningful to you as a person are impossible if you believe the popular message of the teen culture. Okay, so please make sure that you're hanging on to messages that give life and let go of the messages that are harmful. So what you're going to be doing today is two different worksheets, and it's going to be based off of today's lesson. So please make sure that you understand that as you went through today's lesson, I know it was a fairly long one, but we really want you to understand the power of being able to accept who you are does help you as you move through relationships, and it helps you as you move into possible conflict that you're going to have. Okay, conflict, you can't get away from it. Okay, so as you have acceptance of who you are, as you hang out with people that accept who you are, and as you help other people accept who they are, those relationships are going to go much smoother. So when you do have that conflict, when you do disagree with somebody, when you want something different than they want, you're going to be able to solve that problem a lot faster. And that's our goal. All right. So have a good week. We got a first 5-day week in quite a long time. And again, we are going to give you Wednesday off. So have a good one, everybody.